Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I'm going to help you make the very best pairs in the open field. Whether you're starting with just 3 marches and you're trying to do 1 infantry, 1 cavalry, 1 archer, or you're in the end game and you're trying to figure out what your 7 marches are going to look like if you're a big pay-to-win player, we'll do that and everything in between. And at the end of this video, I'll have a bunch of talent builds that I personally have used and can attest can help you get value and smash your enemies, which is my tagline. So consider subscribing to the channel if that's something you're interested in. Let's get started here. The best combos to make, if you're just going to pick 3, why would you just be picking 3? Well, maybe you're newer to the end game and you're trying to decide what it is you're going to do with your account. 1 cavalry, 1 archer, 1 infantry is the foundation you should aspire to, because that's pretty flexible. And remember, just keep in mind, you can't change your equipment once you start doing legendary investments. You're locked in for the rest of the time that you're playing the game. There are 0 ways to switch it around right now. So I would recommend picking things that you know 100% you want to commit to, and picking things where they're flexible. And like, what's pretty flexible and you can 100% commit to, knowing that you'll constantly be getting good stuff? Infantry, archers, and cavalry, right? So let's get started here. First up, we got to talk about Arthur because he just hit the game. And I would say Huo with Arthur is an awesome pair in that order. Okay. Big damage. Everybody was insanely hyped about Huo with Ragnar back when you didn't have someone like Arthur in the game. Now we have Arthur. He does AoE skill damage, and he's not that far off from Ragnar's kit anyways in terms of what he's kind of doing and what his theme is. This is just amazing. It's funny to me that people actually fight about whether or not this is good. It's outstanding. From here, I think actually the better march, and the reason I put that at number 2, is actually an infantry march. And what infantry march you make kind of depends on what you want your philosophy to be. One philosophy might be, you know, what I want to do is pick the 2 strongest infantry commanders. Yeah, their kits have some anti-synergy, but whether you run Liu Che with Ragnar, or more likely Ragnar with Liu Che, this is going to be very hard hitting. These are the 2 best commanders. You pair them together. Like, what are we talking about? Like, when we split them up, we're going to be looking at Skippy Prime, and we're going to be looking at, you know, Alex or Wallace with Liu Che as kind of options. There's so many ways to do this, but if we're talking about making building blocks for your account and then using them for powerful things later, I think these 2 are what you start with. So powerful, very versatile, okay? From here, we need an archer march. There's really only one option. It's Zhuge Liang and Hermann Prime. As of right now, anyways. Weirdly, Shajar does not contribute to a, in my opinion, really powerful open field march at the 3 march level, okay? But there's cool stuff you can do with Shajar, and we will get there. So if you were just starting out, you're like, man, 3 marches, what am I going to do? I like this a lot. It's not a coincidence that a lot of these commanders were on my list of good commanders to potentially swap to during the commander swap event, which probably by the time you're watching this will have ended for endgame kingdoms. Anyways, now we need to talk about getting to 5 marches, okay? How do we do that? And there used to be a lot of debate that I would have with you about maybe it's archers that you do sort of 2 marches of, and cavalry you get 2 marches of, or infantry you get 2 marches of. One of these troop types gets shorted. Okay, what's it going to be? And in my opinion, if you're going to 5 marches, I think what you do is you short the archers. So you're going to do 2 infantry and 2 cavalry marches. All right, that would be my recommendation. And you could make the argument for siege. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. Okay, we'll get there. But if you're making 2 infantry marches, then I think it's pretty safe to say that Ragnar Prime with Skippy Prime is very good. I mean, it's very good. And then I would put Liu Che with either, depending on your philosophy and commander investments, Alexander the Great as the secondary, or you would do William Wallace as the primary and Liu Che as the secondary. And however you want to run that, it is going to slay. And then for your final cavalry march, like, great news. He's been great for a long time. Okay, and it's Nevsky, and you just pair with Joan. And like, this is not a new combo. Everybody knows this is good. Okay, this would be the 5 march combo I would run if I were whittling it down to sort of start over. In fact, on my restart account, I will run something like this, but I don't have the gear for 2 cav marches. And let's talk about why that's the case, okay? There's a reason here that I've left Philip off this list, and it's that Philip is a leadership commander. So first of all, really benefits from having leadership gear. Second of all, really benefits once you get to the point where you have 6 marches or more. Why is that? Because as your marches start to die off in combat, Philip buffing 5 things, I mean, it's nice he's buffing your friends, but like if your kill points are not high enough, then like, I don't know, man, is your kingdom going to keep you? You could try to explain, no, I ran Philip and I ran Trajan and I was buffing things. Like, not a great conversation to have, right? So you need to crank your kill points at the end of the day, even if theoretically buffing the team might be a better outcome for the team. If you can't justify your existence in the kingdom, you're in trouble. It's just facts, right? So that's why I feel like at a low number of marches, you probably don't want someone like Philip. You could make an argument that a 5th march could be a leadership march, but I'm going to make the argument today that that's probably like a 6th march situation. You could totally go one way or another. You could totally say, and I think it would be very reasonable for your 5th march to be a leadership march. And interestingly, if you had the leadership gear, I do think you want to do archers with it. And I think Philip with Shajar would actually be the pick. This would be very powerful. And we know that this is true from sort of looking in Canyon. It's insanely tanky. It buffs a ton. Today it's done with Trajan and Shajar, and there's just incredible synergy with the leadership tree giving healing boosts and the support tree giving healing and attack boosts and Shajar doing healing, right? Like that combination is just very, very, very good. Okay. So if I were to add in a leadership march as a 6th march, that's probably what I would do. And if you care about Canyon, which seems to be in a lot of places these days, I mean, we've got Sunset Canyon, Lost Canyon. Isn't there like Canyon Clash, which is like Alliance versus Alliance? And then there's like a Canyon Ladder tournament. I can't remember the name of it right now. So like there's all these Canyon game modes. So theoretically, you could make the argument that if what you really cared about was Canyon, you actually would take the Cavalry March, make that the sort of 6th priority. You'd bump up a leadership march to be more like this. If I were going to 6 marches, right, you would consider something like this. And then we talk about, well, what about 7 marches? And I think in an ideal world, we would be talking about yet another archer march. And I realize, gosh, if we're trying to get 2 infantry, 2 archer, 2 cavalry, and a leadership march, we kind of need some more archers to get pulled up to the top here for inclusion in this list. And there's a couple that I would consider, all right? One commander, and these are like all the commanders I looked through, and I was like, these are probably not what we're doing. But I would consider commanders like Isong, and I would consider Nebu. So let me find them in this list real quick and pull them to the top. So if I were making a 7th march today in this situation, I would use Ashurbanipal, and I would probably pair at this moment in time, me personally, I'd probably take this Nebu and drag him all the way down to run it kind of like that. So in my perfect world, if I kind of had the equipment to support it, I think that would be the configuration I would be running in the open field. Now, I don't happen to have the equipment to support that. I made my leadership talented gear before they even had leadership gear in the game. So I'm married to infantry. That's a special Chisgule problem, and a few other special individuals who committed to the leadership path. We were ahead of our time, and it is what it is. But if you wanted to do a siege march, I think it would be super reasonable. So let me just rearrange these a little bit, okay? And I'm rearranging them just so it's a little easier to kind of see what's going on here. And we're just going to put the cavalry together, all right? And we're going to put the archers together. Okay, so it's just a little easier visually to be like, right, 2 infantry, 2 cavalry, 2 archer, 1 leadership. An option you could do instead of a leadership march would be to do the ranged marches. And what I have been advised, and I reached out to a couple folks, is that Gadamaja and Gonzalo would be a really good way to go. So if we take these two and just bump them off the board for just a minute, this would be a pretty cool way to run things as well. 2 infantry, 2 archer, 2 cavalry, and a siege march. And let me make sure that I have the order correct here. Yeah, I think I got that right. Gajamada, I think you want to be the primary, Gonzalo the secondary. I don't do siege stuff because I already had 7 sets of equipment. So like I'm already pretty committed on the path that I'm on. So this would be a pretty cool setup if this is what you wanted to do. All right. So I just wanted to mention this siege march as a viable option. And that could be, by the way, if you only had 5 marches, right? Like you could do 2 infantry, 1 cavalry, 1 archer, and a siege march. And that would be very reasonable. In fact, arguably very strong for your kingdom as well. Okay. So siege is not my specialty. I'm locked into 7 sets of equipment. If I could wave a magic wand and swap equipment from, you know, like 1 legendary commitment to another, then like maybe I would make one of these marches. But am I going to make an 8th set? That's pretty expensive to go that route and play at the tier of gameplay that I play at. So for now, I'm chilling on that and I'm just focused on other stuff. But the other thing I wanted to emphasize for a moment is, hey, you can use Philip even if you don't have, okay, a leadership set. So if you had 7 marches and you were looking for a place to put Philip, what could you do? And there's a couple options here, but one, I would argue, has been, how do I want to say this, hyped up the most, okay? And that would be to pair Liu Che with Philip. So we're going to bump these other guys to the side. So this seems to be working really well, in part because Liu Che is busted. So Philip making Liu Che do extra activations of his active skills, very good. Also, Philip does a 70% damage boost when you go mono troop. I think it's 30% base for being a mono troop, plus a 40% buff from his active skill. So yeah, like that's a lot of damage. I suppose that Liu Che wouldn't get the full benefit of that for his active skill if Philip is the secondary, but I think this would be a pretty cool way to sort of run Philip in the open field. You could also kind of justify using him as a secondary to Skippy Prime. I think that could also be fine. He, I think, is good as a secondary to Arthur. So what I want to do is take a moment and give you some combinations where, let's say you never did leadership and you wanted to use 3 cavalry or 3 infantry or 3 archers, right? Like, what would I do? Let's just visit that world really quickly, okay? Because I think it gets kind of interesting. And if what you wanted to do was bring Philip into the mix, but you didn't have leadership gear, then I think what we're talking about is, hilariously, bringing Guan back into the picture. And amazingly, what I think you might end up doing, strangely enough, would be something like this. Skippy with Alexander the Great if you were a 3x infantry player, Liu Che with Philip, okay, and then Guan with Ragnar. And that maybe ends up being, like, strangely the best way to run it. You could consider switching these. Guan with Skippy we know is really good together. Ragnar with Alexander the Great also could be fine. I wouldn't put Alexander the Great with Guan. That combo's very old and not tanky enough. But some combination, I think, of those things would be pretty good. Another alternative that I haven't seen people talking about, but again, I think could be fun to try, would be Skippy with Philip, right? And then you use Liu Che with Alex and Guan with Ragnar. So there's a bunch of ways you could move him around as the secondary and get some pretty cool results. All right. Now, if you wanted to go to 3 cavalry marches instead of 3 infantry, what would I do? Well, let's get this set up again in the way that I would kind of run it. Should be like this. All right. And let's get a 3rd cavalry march going. And I was talking to one of my friends in 2489, and he was like, bro, trust. Keep those cav the same and just add Justinian and William. And I was like, huh, I mean, they just swung in against 960. They fought the best of the best. And like, here we are. And I think this looks like a pretty solid way to run things, right? Like, We know Huo with Arthur is amazing. Why break it up? We know Nevsky with Joan is amazing. Why break it up? We know William's buff is really good, buffing the team for defense and rage. I think this is a very compelling way to run it. If you didn't have Justinian, and a lot of people don't, you're talking about bringing in XY at that point. Or you're talking about bringing in Belisarius Prime. If you're going to bring in Belisarius Prime, you have to remember he needs to be a secondary somewhere. So because I personally don't have Justinian, what I would have to do is to potentially split the Nevsky and the Joan. And you do something like this. Nevsky with William and Joan with Belly. I found Joan with Belly to be very lacking, personally. So I don't know that I can recommend that very highly, quite frankly. But this would be an option. I think I prefer the one with the Justinian William, quite frankly. And weirdly enough, the other option here is that we start to look at using Arthur as the primary. Well, now things get kind of spicy. If you're using Arthur as the primary, I would hope that you have maybe just Philip to use as the secondary. And then what are we talking about using? Probably Huo with William and Nevsky with Joan. Something like that. But that's going to require you to have combo armaments, which some of us have already invested in. So I'm going to use him as the primary. I'm probably going to use him with Nevsky as the secondary. And that's probably my game plan. All right. And gosh, now we get to the 3 Archer March question. And this is just a weird one. I'm going to have to say that I don't have a great answer for you because I feel like archers are just taking a real beatdown right now when I use them in the open field. Could be that it's because my enemies were marking all my marches in the open field. That was a good time. But, I mean, technically this would qualify as an Archer March. But the way I would probably eke out another Archer March here is to call the sort of Philip with Shajar March an Archer March, right? And Shajar has to be the secondary, this is the problem, in order to do her healing. So that means you have to have leadership gear. And it's like, technically it's archers, but no, it's a leadership march is what that really is. Even if you mono troop archers, which I think I would, actually. Yeah, I don't know how I would do this, honestly. I suppose one way you could slice this that I should have talked about earlier is Ashurbanipal with Philip. I think that's pretty reasonable. And then if you wanted another skill damage march, you've got Shajar with either Esong or Nebu. Maybe that's how we would do it. I think that's how we get there. Zhuge Liang with Hermann Prime. Ashurbanipal with Philip is good. I should have mentioned that earlier. Why is that the case? Ashurbanipal makes it so that whenever you use your active skill, you get a buff. That includes extra active skill activations. So Philip, who gives you and his expertise extra activations of active skills, is very good in that situation. I think that could also be pretty outstanding, right? And then you just go the Shajar skill damage route over here. I think we got there, man. So that gave you a shocking variety of combos and things that you can do. Such a shocking variety that this video has ended up way longer than I intended, but I do want to just blast through some talent builds for you really quickly, so let's do that, and you can use timestamps to jump to whichever troop type you care about. All right, we're going to move pretty fast here. This is a Liu Che open field build. Very important that you grab Fight to the Death. Not good in Canyon. Canyon build here, okay? You don't want to take the extra damage. Let's do Ragnar Prime. The GOAT. Here's the Ragnar Prime build. You actually take latent power, which is kind of unusual. Damage over time from him, insane. Pair with Skippy Prime, they both have damage over time. W's, take that talent. From here, I do want to show you a Guan talent build, in case you're using him. I probably will be using him because of my infantry situation. Here it is, looking good. The Guan build. Generate rage, smash enemies, get wins. From here, let's talk about cavalry. The uncontroversial, one and only cavalry build. Would be neat if there were other things to do with cavalry, but this is the thing. Do this thing. From here, we can talk very briefly about an Arthur primary if that's what you're going to do. And as you can see, that is what I am doing, in part because I committed to this before learning that, like, I mean, you can do some cool stuff with this. I I made a meta canyon team that's actually disgusting, but this is the build I'm using for canyon right now. I might switch this around a little bit for open field, maybe, but this is probably it. I think this is what you do right here. There's a bunch of variations of this where you could go for disarm. There's actually a lot to talk about with what you could do. This is what I am doing currently. There you go. Now for archers, pretty uncontroversial. Do this. Okay. You want for open field skill tree. If you want rally garrison, focus the archer tree, my opinion, right? So rally, well, like it's not garrison, but like rallying, I would be looking at something more like this, probably. Okay. You could do some optimizations here around getting razor sharp, but I think something like this with 2 skill damage commanders will be kind of where it's at. And that covers us for both archer pairs, by the way, Ashur-Benipal as well, right? And here's what I was talking about with Ashur-Benipal, Philip secondary, actually very synergistic. Not perfect, but pretty damn good. Okay. From here, what else do we need to cover? I guess leadership. I can show you what I've got on Trajan for talents here. This is a open field build and canyon build. If you're going to use Shajar with Philip, then you're going to want the healing talents. So let's see if I've built that for you. I bet that I've got something. Here it is. This is a mixed troop healing build. You know it's a healing build because we took this right over here. Okay. But if you were doing mono troop, you'd have to carve off these talents and decide if you would prefer to have an AoE slow, which ain't bad, or move in on talents that make you strong when you get weak, which would also be fine. All right. And I think that covers all of the talents without making this video another 20 minutes. If you made it this far into a Chisgule gaming video, consider subscribing. I hope that you're getting value so that you can smash your enemies. That's the tagline. How many times can I squeeze that into a video without it being over the top? Maybe once was one time too many. GG. Toss a like on here, subscribe. I'm hyped for our next KVK. I'm in 2377 now, which is just absolutely insane. We're at almost 23.5 billion power outside of KVK with 4 people out of the alliance. Holy smokes. Bro, this is crazy. Yeah, subscribe. I'll use a bunch of the combos that I talked about here in the open field. GG. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.